To have today's date on it?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I think it's working then. So today's presentation is about the sirens mostly in Norman and Moore. We'll talk about a little bit about Noble and Newcastle as well, but primarily Norman and Moore. We run a net every Saturday at noon, and we'll talk about that today. Why is that? There we go. Saturday noon, Siren Net. Norman, back in 2011, the sirens had not been, let's just say they had not been well maintained over the years. There's some new units, but a lot of them were old and hadn't been maintained very well. So a bond issue was passed by the voters, and they bought an entirely new system that year. We now have 67 sirens spread throughout the city. That same year, the Central Oklahoma Emergency Management Association came up with a policy for testing and sounding so that all the jurisdictions that are members of COEMA all did the same thing. And that's when we moved our test to Saturday noon. I think our test used to be Friday at noon. Somebody correct me if that's wrong. But now everybody that's a member of all the jurisdictions that are a member of the COEMA all sound their tests at the same time, which is good for public education because you can tell people that, yeah, if you hear the siren at Saturday at noon and it's not cloudy, it's probably just the test. They also adopted some guidelines on when to sound sirens. Mostly it's just for tornadoes. They generally don't sound them for anything else. If there's a tornado threat in the jurisdiction where the siren is, that's when the sirens sound. So we bought a whole bunch of new sirens back in 2011, got them spread out through the city. They are all identical. They are all Whalen units that look just like this. This is a picture from Michelle from last year. They all have a battery box at the bottom. They all have a solar panel. They also have a VHF radio where they receive their signaling and where they transmit back telemetry. They all have a number, and that number corresponds to the location on this map. As I mentioned, we have 68 of them in Norman. We actually have 67. The 68th is at OU, and it belongs to OU, but it is set off by the city. Norman is a large city, as many of you know. Some people don't know it's a large city. Some people seem to think we never annexed all the land around the lake, and they think it ends at like Porter or something, or 12th. No, it goes out to 180th, and we have sirens everywhere out here, as well as in the urban part of Norman. I have heard that it was planned to get more than what is shown here, but this is what we have, and it provides pretty good coverage. Out here, at least, you can usually hear 3 or 4 or 5 sirens at a time if you listen carefully. But there is a lot of coverage. There are probably some holes that I'm sure Mr. Grizzle can tell you where the holes are because he probably gets complaints. But city is pretty well covered by sirens. These are all solid state. They have no tubes in them at all. They have no motors in them either. They are a stack of speakers with a large audio amplifier in that box at the bottom. So no moving parts on these, which is different from the old ones. So they sound 360 degrees at all times. Let's see. Oh yeah, so I don't know where this little artifact thing is coming from there. So these are sounded by zone. The city, because we're so big, the city is roughly divided into quarters. And if the warning polygon touches a zone, then that zone is going to sound automatically. What is a polygon? A polygon is the shape drawn out by the warning forecaster down at the Norman Forecast Office, where not everybody gets their own forecast office in town, but Norman does. When they issue a warning for a storm cell, they actually draw a line around that cell and project it forward in time based on storm motion and whatnot. When they do that and they hit the warn button, it automatically generates the warning based on that polygon, gives all the location information, but it also encodes a set of latitude and longitude in that. And in fact, if you dig around and find the raw warning text online for a thunderstorm warning or for a tornado warning, you will actually see that polygon in terms of latitude and longitude listed out there. Well, take that same information, put it into the Sirens software, and it can tell you exactly which sirens need to sound to warn for that area. Now, the city doesn't rely entirely on that polygon. They have it set so that if a polygon touches a particular zone, that entire zone will sound, which is probably a reasonable reaction. They have tested it where it just sounds within the polygon, and that works fine. But they want to provide a little bit more warning than just within the polygon and the immediate surrounding area. After that first initial automatic alarm, everything else is done manually on the order of the fire chief. And that'll be done usually through dispatch or through the EOC if somebody's at the EOC. But first one in Norman is automatic. After that, it's manual. I put this down at the bottom because it needs to be repeated frequently. There is no all clear signal. If you hear a siren in Norman, or more for that matter, there is danger and you should seek shelter right now. There is no all clear. Some jurisdictions in the past have had the all clear ability, have sounded an all clear. They don't do that. That was part of the policy that came out of the Central Oklahoma Emergency Management Agency policy. All the towns involved, all the cities involved in that agreed that there would be no all clear. If you hear a siren, it's because there is danger or it's Saturday at noontime. Get over to Moore. Moore has, it is not a monoculture of sirens in Moore. Moore has many, many different types of sirens. And I had a little bit of fun last night going through and finding pictures of the various different models that they have, and they have a bunch of them, including the T1000 Thunderbolt there in the black and white picture. It's fitting that it's a black and white picture because these aren't made anymore. But that's, I think, when people hear the word tornado siren, I'm pretty sure that's what they're thinking of. They're thinking about those Thunderbolts there, and you can see those rotating easily. They got a big motor in the box at the bottom, and they wind up and they spin around, and they're reliable. As Mr. Kitch says, if you maintain them, they'll just keep working. So they have a variety of different sirens. A lot of solid state ones these days, but also some electromechanical ones. They have 42 sirens. They do their activations a little bit differently. The siren is activated by the EM. He's very excited because he has a phone app that allows him to do this from like Kansas if he wants to. But he can set them off remotely. He can set them off manually from the EOC. But they are always manually activated by someone in the city of Moore. And as in Norman, there is no all clear in Moore either. This is their map. If you go back to see the little squares here? That's 1 square mile, right? There's Moore. Those squares are also 1 mile. You see that basically Moore is 16, 18, 20 square miles. Norman is 168 square miles. 91.7. Including the lake. 20, yeah. 22. Yes. Okay. Yes. They have 42 sirens within that much smaller space. So they have many more sirens in Moore than we do. We have 68 to cover our huge area. They have 42 to cover their much, much smaller area. As far as I know, and Mr. Kitch is present and can confirm this, but as far as I know, it's one zone. If one goes, they all go. Is that right, Galen? We have the ability to sound one, sound in zones, or sound them all. But given that we're only about 5 by 5 square miles, it's pretty hard to make an argument that it's going to hit one part of town and not threaten another. So normally we just sound all of them. Right. Right. Yeah, because the area is smaller. In fact, I think I bet if you measured it out, the zones in Norman are larger than all of Moore. So it's a different problem statement, and it has a different solution. Let's see, there was something else I was going to say about these. Oh yeah, testing. The test activations in Norman are 60 seconds, except for a couple of sirens at public parks. Griffin and Reeves both have sirens right in the park. They only sound for 20 seconds because there's usually something going on in the park at Saturday at noon. Likewise, down by the Animal Welfare Center down on Jenkins Street, that siren only sounds for 20 seconds. So there are a couple of shorties. More sirens, when they test them, they run for 3 minutes. They have an automatic timer within the unit itself, and they'll run for 30 seconds, and then they're, 3 minutes, and then they're done. So, we also cover Noble and Newcastle. Noble and Newcastle are a different kettle of fish. Let's consider those works in progress. In Noble, Noble is a much smaller town than the other towns in terms of population, and that smaller population turns into a smaller tax base, and because of that, they don't have as much money as a Norman or a Moore. They are actively searching for grants to improve their system. They currently have 5 sirens. One of them does not work and has not worked as long as we've been monitoring it. They know this, and they're working on it, but you know, money is a thing. But there is grant money out there, and they're working on that, and they're gonna improve their system. Newcastle has sirens as well. They have a brand new EM to replace John, who passed away last year. And we're getting him up to speed on ham radio and what we can offer him. We are actively in both towns collecting siren reports. We don't have many assigned spotters there because, again, their populations are smaller, so there are fewer hams too. But we will do whatever we can to assist them in any way possible. Whatever they need us to do, we'll do. We're offering up the information on the sirens, and we'll work on that. We'll get that feedback loop to be a little bit tighter. We're very fortunate to have the relationships that we do with Norman and Moore, but it's not like that in Noble and Newcastle. That's just a function of history and the relative sizes of the towns and whatnot. Okay, so let's talk about the net itself. The SCARS Norman area Saturday noon siren net is a directed net. It is not a check-in net. You do not call net control and give them your call sign and wait to be acknowledged. You wait to hear your call sign. There is a roster. We'll talk about how to get on that roster if you're not already on it. Wait until your station is called by the net control station. The net control nowadays rotates between KD5ZYD, N5UWY, and KK5IO. Each of us uses the club station call, W5NOR, when we're acting as net control for consistency. When your station gets the call, you respond with your call sign because you have to ID. Your assigned outdoor warning siren number. We go through town by town, so we'll do Norman first, and then Moore, and then Noble, and then Newcastle. But you give your assigned outdoor warning siren number, and you can see on the maps. We'll go back and look at those in a bit. Each siren has a unit number, and then either test good or test failed. We don't need to hear the runtime. We know how long the sirens run. We don't need to hear about control tones because we don't need to. That's a can of worms we don't really want to open. If you are in the habit of listening to the control tones, and I'm not going to tell you where those are, they're not hard to find. If you have a problem with hearing the control tones, that's actually important information, but it doesn't need to go over the net. You can email whoever's net control or text them, and we will pass that information on, but that doesn't need to go over the air. What we do need to hear are details of any silent. The most common failure mode that we have is that it's just silent. It just either it didn't hear the tones in the control unit and didn't sound, or there's something wrong, and it's broken, and it heard the tones, or didn't hear the tones, and just didn't go on. Sometimes the sirens will make noise, but it's obvious that they are under the weather and they're not feeling well, and they make a short burp noise, or they otherwise don't make the traditional tornado siren wail. I mentioned before, Norman's has a variable time for the test. They're set for 1 minute, 60 seconds, except for the 3 short sirens that run 20 seconds. As a function of how the software works, they usually sound for a little longer than 60 seconds, sometimes up to 70 seconds. That's not important information. We don't need to know that. That's an expected condition. What we do need to know is if your siren usually runs 60 seconds and it only runs 3, we need to know that. If it normally runs 60 seconds and it runs for 5 minutes, we need to know that too. So really long, like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, yeah, we need to know that. Now, occasionally, and prior to, I want to say it was 2018, they were set to run for 3 minutes on the test, and Mr. Grizzle shortened that down to 60 seconds. They're solid state. They don't need to run that long. They're either going to work or they're not going to work. But if they do go for like 2 minutes, 3 minutes, yes, please report that fact. But if they go 1:10, 1:15, that we expect that. It's just a function of the way the software works. Moors run for 3 minutes on an internal timer. It's a different mechanism, and they generally only run their 3 minutes and then they shut themselves off. Again, if one goes short for some reason, we probably need to know that. And certainly if it goes for more than 3 minutes, we need to know that too. If the siren is electromechanical, that's not a thing in Norman, but in the other towns it is. We need to know if it's rotating normally. If it's sitting there wailing and not moving and it normally moves, we need to know that. That's a mechanical failure, and they'll need to get service people to take a look at that. Let's see. So what are we trying to do with this net? Well, if you've been to a Skywarn training class, and there's a couple of extra sessions coming up, a basic and an advanced, that are being held in conjunction with the National Weather Festival this year. The National Weather Festival is virtual this year because of everybody's favorite virus. So the Weather Center Forecast Office is doing a couple of extra Skywarn classes online. I posted the links on Facebook, and probably we ought to get those on the web page somewhere. If you're interested in taking a Skywarn spotter class, there are classes coming up in October. Anyway, so if you take one of those classes, you know that what they're trying to do is from spotters, they're trying to get ground truth. They can see everything on the WSR-88D. We've invested millions and millions of dollars in that nationwide system of weather radar, and which is, by the way, is all, most of the development and the maintenance is done right here from Norman. We're trying to find the ground truth. We're trying to find out, yeah, we see what we see on the radar, but what's down underneath the radar? What are we trying to find out? Well, the SCARS, Norman area, Saturday noon siren net's the same thing. The sirens have telemetry in both cities. I don't know about Noble and Newcastle. I sort of doubt it. But in Norman and Moore, those sirens report back. That's a 2-way radio on that tower. And they can be queried, and they can be tested remotely with or without an audible test. There's all kinds of information, but it doesn't always match up. Sometimes everything's hunky-dory on the telemetry stuff, and one of our observers will be out there and find out, no, it didn't sound, or it sounded, but the volume was way reduced. Or the telemetry says it's all busted, and our observer finds out that, well, no, it sounded fine. We're providing ground truth for the telemetry that we're already getting. And the goal here is, as I say there, actionable intelligence. What do I mean by that? We don't need people, we don't need a report where the observer says, I hear sirens, or I hear a siren. That's not actually, thank you, but that's not actually actionable intelligence. What is I hear siren number 54 sounding. It tested good. or Siren 54 test failed, it was silent. That's actionable too. You need to be able to identify your siren individually. Now, there are some people that are able to identify two different ones individually. That's fine. You're very talented. Congratulations. Thank you. If you're in between more than two, it gets really difficult sometimes. But we really need to know if a particular siren is sounding or is not sounding. That's how we provide the ground truth for the telemetry. An equivalent thing in severe weather spotting would be, I see a tornado. Well, that's great. Where are you? Where is that tornado? Describe where you are. We need to know which siren is sounding, or especially which siren is not sounding or is otherwise broken. Again, it's not simple if you're equidistant from a bunch of different sirens. And let me also mention another thing. The wind really makes a difference to the sound propagation. Our winds are from the south or southwest. They'll switch around during the year. And if you all of a sudden, if one Saturday afternoon the wind is from the north, boy, it makes a big difference. All those sirens you're used to hearing, you're not going to hear them anymore. It's been quite amazing. I don't think I covered the history of the net. Let me just run back and do that. We started this in 2017. We added, we were just doing the city of Norman. This made Mr. Kitch very antsy. He wanted to do more, and we did more. We started, once we kind of got into the rhythm of doing it for Norman, we added more in May of 2018. And then in, I guess it was 2019, we added Noble and Newcastle. People ask about Oklahoma City all the time, and Oklahoma City's tough. We SCARS cannot cover the 600 plus square miles of Oklahoma City. It's just not going to happen. And one or two sirens, being able to cover one or two sirens on the edge of Oklahoma City, or even three or four, I'm not sure how much value that adds. So we're not doing Oklahoma City for the foreseeable future. There are plenty of clubs in Oklahoma City area, and I encourage them to start their own siren net. Our net is not the very first siren net ever. Edmund has been running one of these for, I don't know, years and years and years. This is not a new idea, but it's something that gives people a chance to participate, and it's a service to the cities that we serve. There's an URL on the screen, w5nor.org/siren. All the maps that I've shown today are linked there. There is also a list of the individual units and their locations. The list for, I think it's got the north, south, and it's a little bit different. I used to do it all in a spreadsheet, and we've migrated that to the web because it's just better that way. I used to have north, south street and the east, west street, and then the nearest landmark like a school or a park or something, and I can't remember if that's still like that on the web page. We'll have to take a look at that.
All there. It's all there.
It's all there. Okay. If you are interested in becoming an observer for your local siren, you look at the map and you say, oh, that's the siren that's near my house, I should report on that. Shoot me an email, N5UWY@ARRL.net. Tell me where you are, and we'll talk about it, and we'll see about getting you enrolled in the net. Let me make sure on my notes here. Oh, one other thing I forgot to mention. The siren units, the electronic ones, I meant to mention this earlier, I apologize. These are all set, both Norman and Moore, on the electronic sirens. These are set to wail. That's all they will do is wail. Now, the units themselves can do a variety of different tunes, and in fact have a voice capability as well. History has shown in both cities that's doing something other than wailing sirens is problematic from a public education point of view. It just confuses the heck out of people. The voice situation doesn't work as well as the brochure would lead you to believe. The Whalen brochures and the federal brochures, oh yeah, you can talk to your citizens through the, yeah, well, you know how you hear multiple sirens at your location, and sometimes one sounds like it starts up a little bit after the one well, it's air propagation, right? That sound is propagating through the air. Well, if those were all voices, think about that for a bit. If each voice started up half a second, it doesn't work very well. Mr. Grizzle told me they did change the amplifier and the modulator, the one at Reeves Park, to get a better voice signal there, because they are right in the middle of a park, and everybody at the park can hear that siren. I don't know if they've done the same thing at Griffin or not. Generally speaking, those other features are not used. If you hear a wailing siren, it's either Saturday at noontime or there is danger and you need to seek shelter. And that's a much easier message to educate people on than saying that, well, if you hear the wail and it does this, that means that. And if you hear this two-tone sound, it means that. Tulsa used to do that, and I don't know if they still do it. They had that big flash flood with a bunch of people died back in the 80s. And in the early 90s, when they replaced their siren system, they had it set up so that they had a wail for tornadoes and they had a two-tone for floods. I don't know if they've continued that or not, but that seems to be a rarity. Despite the siren units can do all kinds of things, it from a public education standpoint, it doesn't work particularly well. I think, yes, that's the famous black slide there. So let me do that. Let me do that. What do you want to know about sirens and SirenNet in particular?
Does California use these sirens for fire warnings?
No idea.
Okay.
They're all too busy running, probably. No, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. When I lived in Illinois, they had siren. They had warning sirens that they used for severe weather. The system was a little hodgepodge, like, different cities had different things, or villages and towns up there. A lot of their funding for their sirens up there, believe it or not, came from the nuclear plant in Joliet. As part of their mandatory evacuation stuff, they put a lot of money, ComEd put a lot of money into siren stuff up there. My guess is that this part of the country has a better developed siren system than the rest of the country.
I know California uses them for Diablo Canyon nuclear reactor.
Yeah.
For nuclear events, because my mother-in-law lives in that shadow.
Yep. Yeah, there are mandatory evacuation stuff related to nuke plants. And it's like in Chicago, in the Chicago area, the ComEd put a lot of money into that and a lot of fiber to connect them together and whatnot. What else do we want to know?
Peter, everybody may know this, but I get asked a lot, why can't I hear the siren when I'm watching the football game?
Oh my goodness, thank you very much for that, Sam. So, you may have noticed I referred to them as outdoor warning sirens. Those words are chosen specifically because the sirens are designed to alert you when you are outdoors. They are not necessarily designed to be heard while you are indoors, especially if you're cheering on your local football team. They are outdoor warning sirens. You need to have a weather radio. You need to be aware of what's going on, have your TV or radio on if it looks like a stormy day. They are outdoor warning sirens. So yeah, you're not going to hear them probably if you've got a lot of stuff going on in the house. Another item, Norman will often cancel the audible siren test if there is a football game occurring within a few hours of noon. Generally, if it's a 6 o'clock game, they don't change anything. But if it's earlier than that, they will often not do that. Likewise, for things like Norman Music Festival, and some other things back when we used to have that sort of thing, they will cancel it as well. I've personally, I think there's an opportunity for public education there. They only sound for a minute. If it's something like the music festival, if you schedule a break right around noon and make an announcement saying that, hey, listen, the sirens are going to sound here. They're only going to sound for a minute. If you hear this in sometime other than Saturday noon, seek shelter, blah, blah, blah. You could do public education, and I think that would be useful. But the city administration doesn't see it that way. So despite what the emergency manager may feel, the city doesn't see it that way. So thank you for that. Thank you for reminding me that. Outdoor warning sirens. They're designed to be heard while you are outdoors and warn you.
You want to talk about the milestone we hit this week?
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but
2,500.
did we actually cross that threshold?
Yes.
So since we started this back in 2017, we have now recorded 2,500 siren reports. That does not mean we had 2,500 hams who reported once. That means that there are many hams who have been reporting every week, multiplied by the number of sirens. Most guys can do, or girls, can do one siren. It's possible when Wayne still lived in Moore, he had a little route he would drive because in 3 minutes he could hit 3 or 4 sirens. That's not the number of, it's the total number of reports, the total number of siren reports. How am I trying to say this? 2,500 is a lot. We're turning in probably, how many a week are we turning in?
About 33, somewhere.
Yeah, that sounds right. We turn in about 33 individual siren reports, regardless of how many observers we have, turn in about 33 reports a week. Yeah, so good on us for doing that. It's been interesting. It's been interesting. What else do you need to know?
Something that may be of interest is, at least with my sirens, I'm not sure how the oiling is down here. Sirens in war that are the electronics actually operate from batteries. There's 4 large 12-volt deep cycle batteries to run from, and the commercial power or solar power on them simply keeps the batteries charged. So
Okay.
That's one reason I run mine a full 3. If you've got a weak battery, your batteries are starting to get down. If they don't run 3 minutes, then you're not doing a complete test on the batteries.
I don't know how the Norman ones are. I know that there's a battery box on them. I know that there's a solar panel that charges that battery. I do not know if they have a commercial power feed on them. I don't know.
I've never seen one.
Yeah, I don't think they have commercial power.
Hey, Peter.
There he is.
Peter.
Somebody said Peter. Go ahead.
That's David.
Oh, hey, hi. How are you? We were talking about you. Your ears were burning, weren't they?
Yeah, I was listening. We have one siren with AC power that's battery backup at Norman High School. That was in our old configuration. We bought one Wayland siren. That's the oldest Wayland siren we have. And it does have AC with battery backup. The rest of them are all solar.
Okay, so they are solely by battery. Well, they're powered by solar, but battery storage. Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Well, the other way around. They're powered by battery with solar.
Well, right.
So that's why if you hear that burp and they stop, what happens on the reporting is that's good enough for me to get a signal on the software that says that siren worked properly. However, the siren ran for 5 seconds because it had enough to start and stop, send a message. So that's why one of the reasons why this net is so critical is because of, we get a lot of sirens that have no report. Tells me there's a problem. But if I have, and I monitor that for 2-3 weeks on sirens that do that, and then you guys confirm what's going on, because it takes money. It said we don't do our own maintenance. I have to contract it out. So if I have on-ground reporting on a siren that keeps telling me it's not working, that's troubleshooting. So that tells me I have something going on with the radio system back to the software, rather than having to send a technician out there and mess with a siren. That means we can kind of narrow that focus down to why is the radio station at station 7 not getting a good tone. And we have a big problem with that here the last 3 years, where there's days I'll wake up and check my siren report and I got 67 dead sirens. We have a real radio problem, or I shouldn't say radio, a signal strength problem that has developed. And Mark and you guys, and we put a massive amount of time into it, and we've narrowed down some problems. But I sent you the report this morning. The last few mornings we've had consistently 7 sirens no report. One of those sirens, number 34, we put a new board in, but we haven't had the ability to get it programmed properly. So 34 is probably working, but it's probably reporting as another siren. So
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just can't emphasize enough, in my situation, the on-ground reporting is still by far the most valued component of the outdoor warning system there is.
I can report on number 34. Number 34 is my siren and not me sounding. All of this goes back to what Peter had put on the screen as actionable intelligence. It gives David or myself or Donnie or the guy at Noble, actual hard information that then we put into action, either by calling our vendor or going out and looking at it ourselves or whatever. It gives us actual true information.
Well, that's the idea, and we're happy to do it. Happy to do it. Keeps us off the streets and out of the bars at noon on Saturday. So.
You do it right, it puts you on the streets.
What's that?
Because if you do it right, it puts you on the streets.
Well, yeah, that's true too. So that's all I've got. You've heard the kudos from the 2 emergency managers there. So if you live near a siren that isn't being reported on, join us. Happy to have you.
Peter, I got a couple of comments.
Couple comments. Go ahead.
One, you were talking about the gaps. We definitely have identified some gaps over the years, and the aesthetics of Norman have changed along I-35 also. That's caused some changes that we need to address also. Bear with me a minute. I'm going to step outside. So I don't have any background noise. All righty. They rebuilt I-35 3 times over the years, and the volume of noise is far different than when we originally put it in. We got 2 sites, one over behind the mobile home park, behind the Chevrolet dealership, and then right across the other side of both east and west. That's 2 areas that definitely need to be improved. On East 48th Street, around Alameda area, up in there, there's a big gap, and we've got one up north that is also been identified. So we've got some areas there. Just boils down to money. Average install price is, I don't know, about $40,000 to $45,000 per, a little cheaper when you buy more, all that kind of stuff. So the question begins, how do we pay for that? We were going after mitigation money, and I got asked not to pursue the mitigation grant at the time because of other construction things, in which a cost share 75-25. So, well, I come out here and I got all the neighborhood dog barking now. So if the background noise is too much, let me know. The issue is on funding. We got we can do another bond issue. We can go for mitigation grants, which is rather arduous, very frustrating, long time to occur. You may or may not ever see the grant approved, and then there's a lot of issues with that. And then the third thing is, little known fact on the public safety sales tax money is emergency management is included as a viable funded organization within Norman. It says public safety and everybody automatically thinks fire and police and that's it. But at the bottom of the language, they threw the typical and emergency management in there. So politically, all you Normanites, not only for the EOC, but for the tower project we've been working on, and anything viable under emergency management, public safety sales tax money is legal to use for it. And same way with sirens. It's just a matter of kind of what Peter alluded to a while ago. It's just the politics and convincing the leadership to, to address the issues or not. On the timing, the 60-second timing came about because one previous council person who no longer lives in Oklahoma walked their dog on Saturday, literally. I'm not kidding. Walked their dog on Saturday at noon, and the little dog got scared, and 63 minutes was just too long. So because we do, we can change the parameter. There's a siren with a few keystrokes. The leadership at the time, who is no longer in Oklahoma, said, change it. So we changed it. And you're correct on Griffin, Reeves, and the Animal Control Center, around 20 seconds. And the timing, the variable on the timing, yeah, they may go 58 seconds. They may go 1 minute and 5 seconds. It's just kind of weird. You said something else I want to address, and I just having a senior moment, but I can't remember what it said.
It's the dogs chasing, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm. EOC, you mentioned the dispatch. In a general statement, dispatch will not sound the sirens. We have an order of merit in Norman of who's authorized to sound the sirens. However, with all of the changes of personnel and retirements, probably a good idea we need to dust that off again, because the people that are in that order of merit probably don't even realize they're in that order of merit. But
understood.
Fire chief, if you don't know, fire chief's the emergency management director, then myself, then the assistant chief on duty, then the dispatch supervisor has authority to sound the sirens if the above 3 people cannot be contacted for any reason. Actual event, the sirens will sound 3 minutes. So if sirens are going off for 3 minutes, and on the far east side of town, it's bright sunshiny day, it'd be a good idea to find out what's going on. The meaning, you didn't address the meaning of the sirens, which we came to an agreement at the Central Emergency Management. What does it mean when the sirens go off? What are we trying to tell the people? And, you can, depending on age and generation and knowledge, take it for what it is. But the official thing that we're trying to tell people is to go inside and seek further information. And the reason why is because just the example I gave. Your tornado may not be imminent to you, but you may be hearing your sirens going off because it's imminent to West 12th Street, and it's coming, to East 24th Street. So, the thing that we want to say, and here is what really is funny, and Galen, I'm sure will concur when you get these complaints. Well, I couldn't hear my siren. I heard all them other sirens. I heard them in the distance. The siren down, 3 blocks over went off, but my siren didn't sound. So therefore I took no action. So that's always comical to me when I get those complaints. Well, I heard all the other sirens, but I wasn't sure what was going on. So it goes back to the definition of what it is we're trying to say when the sirens go off. Go inside, seek further information. Thank you.
One
There you
thing,
go.
Peter, one thing that we didn't cover that should. So the sirens run, in a real event, sirens run for 3 minutes. When the siren stops running, that does not mean that the threat is over. The sirens don't run the entire length of the threat. So if a tornado warning's issued that's 45 minutes long, you're only going to hear the sirens, once for 3 minutes. Now in our city, based on recent history, the former city manager on May 20th stood behind me, and they run for 3 minutes, and he'd go to about another minute, goes, hit him again, hit him again. So I think we ran our sirens 9 times during that event. However, again, just because the sirens have quit does not mean that you can come out of the party hole.
There is no all clear.
And there is no all clear.
Hey, Peter, this is David again.
Go ahead.
It's what happens when you start getting old guys start thinking about things. Your memory comes back to you eventually. Along with Galen's comment and along with my comment about what the meaning of the siren is, the best example I can give is the very first time our sirens went off with the software after we installed them during an actual event was at the same time the National Weather Service had decided they were going to elongate their polygons in order to try and increase their lead warning times. And there was a tornado situation coming across, and that was in whenever King took over. It was 2016, I think.
Something like that, yeah. 15 maybe, but yeah.
The tornado was coming across McLean County. It was bearing down on Norman. We knew we were going to get a warning. He and I was sitting there talking, and we were trying to decide whether to let the software run. Let's just cross our fingers and pucker up and let's see what happens. Or we were going to wait and set them off manual. We were having that discussion outside the EOC door, and then all of a sudden our sirens kicked off. And we're like, what the bright sunshiny day outside? What the hell? Well, the reason why was because National Weather Service had elongated that polygon, and it picked up some of the sirens in our, that's another clarification, that the polygon has got to have at least one siren in the polygon. I can't ever imagine that we would have a polygon in Norman that would not include one of our sirens. But it could go in Cleveland County, which
Right.
it does quite a bit,
Right.
to the northwest, and not include Norman. So
Right.
when you get, so that's just clarification. But anyway, they drew this giant polygon that encompassed the very far west side of Norman, that encompassed one of my sirens, and set them off. And oh my God, fire that damn Grizzle. He don't know what he's doing. We had complaints, emails, we had phone calls.
That was just
And
from us.
what?
And that was just from us.
Oh yeah, no doubt. Oh, that is a point. You get back in 2010 when we had the tornado go right down Highway 9.
Oh yeah.
And the north side of Norman was bright sunshiny day, and the south side of Norman was getting destroyed. Before the 3 minutes was over with, I had no less than 5 emails go to the city manager to fire me immediately. Because back then it was all or nothing. We couldn't, it was the old system, and so anyway, my point there is it very well could have the same situation where the tornado polygon picks up center to the west side of Norman, and the tornado is still over, west of Newcastle or Blanchard or somewhere way over there. But as the National Weather Service develops their ability and desire to increase lead warning times, that's going to have an impact on how sirens go off.
Yeah, especially with the warn on forecast stuff coming up, because they're trying to push that notification time backwards in time. Trying to give people more time, but if stuff is automated, that's got to take that into account. So yeah, it'll be a balancing thing between how big the polygon is in time versus how big it is on the map. And yeah, it's going to take some adjustment, I'm sure.
That's why we have a real person with a real brain making Not that that's me.
Yeah, and so damned if you do, if damned if you don't, because if you had not set off the sirens in 2010 everywhere, and there had been damage outside of where you were trying to warn for, there'd been emails telling, oh, he needs to be fired. So yeah, it's a thankless task.
How is he still here?
I don't know.
I'd just like to clarify something you said real early in their presentation, Peter.
David, whatever Grizzle said takes precedence over anything I said.
Well, you said that if a polygon hits a siren, then the zone, which contains 1/4 of Norman's sirens, will go off. Is that what you said before?
What I was trying to say was what Mr. Grizzle said. If that polygon includes a siren in one of our zones, that entire zone goes off. That's what I was trying to say. I believe that's what Mr. Grizzle said. He can correct me if I'm wrong. If that polygon doesn't, I was thinking in terms of zone, but the polygon's actually got to hit one of the sirens. But then that entire zone, is that right, David?
Yeah, that's correct. Matter of fact, we had a little tornado in the southeast part of Cleveland County down by Lexington one time come across, and the polygon was in Cleveland County, but did not include the sirens down in the southeast. But the direction and path of the storm was such that it could have affected within the city limits of Norman. And so we had that situation. And what can happen is I can just simply take a mouse and draw in the sirens that I want to have sound, and they sound off. We can draw our own polygons or our own little diagrams, and then those particular sirens go off. And I don't think that will set off the entire zone. I think it will just, set off the 2 or 3 sirens that I picked.
Oh, wow.
We eventually chose not to do that because it took a right turn and kept on going out of the county. But there is a situation that, again, it could hit Cleveland County, somewhat in the city of Norman or close to it. But if there is not at least one siren included in that polygon, because it's just like Peter said, they operate off of grid coordinates. So the system will see that polygon grid coordinate includes a siren, and then it will say, okay, time to shine.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't follow the Weather Service stuff closely, which I do because I'm immersed in it, less than I was at my previous job, but it used to be that and it's still the case for the weather radio, it's county by county. So they'll warn for Cleveland County, and the way the weather radios work, it's still by county. You can subdivide a county into 9 pieces, but very few places actually do that. And that's not much granularity anyway. However, the actual warning message that comes out has that polygon in it, and it allows that fine-grained control over exactly what happens and where it happens. But it's pretty good, and it gets better every year, like a lot better every year, but it's not perfect. And so having a human person in there to go and look at it and say, okay, yeah, I see what's going on here, but we're not going to blow that siren because it doesn't really look like it's going to do that. Everybody's trying to be conservative and make sure that the people that get the warnings get the warnings. And if there's people around that area that also get the warnings, that's okay, but you don't want to go too big. It's all a balancing act. And there's got to be, you hear a lot of talk about machine learning and artificial intelligence. Yeah, okay, fine. It's good to have somebody looking at it and running the system. It's computer aided.
My last comment that talked about the voice capability.
Yeah.
Each one of the Wayland sirens has the ability that you can plug in a hand mic and make noise come over it. But it's like I mentioned, we discovered that you're putting out 1,000 watts or whatever it is of voice power, and You got to really have somebody that knows broadcast voice. They got to have the ability to know their inflection, hold the mic at a certain distance. It's really tough to turn a siren into a loudspeaker system.
Yeah.
The Reeves Park, you said something about Griffin. Reeves Park is the only one that we added hardware, a different controller board, and some stuff to actually have broadcast quality at Reeves Park. And what we do down there is I have a little remote system, kind of like Mark has got right there in Station 7. Well, we put the receiver on the siren, and then we put the transmitter inside the police bus, and then all they have to do is turn the microphone on and talk, and turn the microphone off and lay it down. And I realize sometimes that's too much, but but again,
says the guy who let me broadcast the other day.
Say again.
Says the guy who let me broadcast over the mall the other day when we were testing.
Yeah. So anyway, it still takes someone who understands just like radio broadcasting.
Yes, if you do this, it doesn't work very well.
That's about what it sounds like when you're out when you just go to any siren,
Right.
Because it's just too loud, it's too powerful. We can also broadcast voice using our little football, as I call it, our remote control station. However, during one medieval fair, when I was trying to practice actually at the medieval fair, I thought Anne Marie was going to shoot me, because every time I would activate the voice control, it sounded like a shotgun going off over the sirens, and you see 100,000 people hit the deck. It was not a good plan to test when you have a massive crowd there either. So,
and that's why that particular unit was upgraded, because of medieval fair, because it's right there. So yeah.
Yep.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay. Any more questions? Otherwise, we'll wrap it up here.
This is Al. I've got 3 short questions.
Certainly.
Question the first, is there going to be a net today?
As far as I know, yes. I'm not net control today, and I've forgotten who is. I think it's Chad.
Okay, I have a whole herd of people to organize ahead of the net. And question B, do all the sirens have the same number of speakers on them?
That's a question for Mr. Grizzle. Are they all the same size stack, or some shorter?
they are now. We did have one that only had 6, and for language in Wayland's terms, they call a speaker a driver. We did have one unit that had 6 on it. And then thanks to the Cleveland County road crew that destroyed one of my sirens by backing over it, not only hitting it one day, but completely knocking it over the second, we took the salvageable speakers and stuff out of that one and increased the stacks on the one unit that had 6. So yes, all of them have 10 speakers. So then that's another reporting measure. We have, Peter, I sent you the report, by the way.
Yeah,
I didn't
yeah, I
send it
saw
to the text, so you'll pass that on.
I'll pass it on, yeah.
And maybe one of the meetings we'll bring up an entire report and go over what the report looks like. But my report comes back and it tells me what sirens do not report, and then it tells me what sirens report issues. And I've got 7 currently that are not reporting. That doesn't mean they're not working. It means they're not reporting. And then I got another 6 or 7 that tells me batteries are low or amps are blown or something. And then from that consistent reporting, I've learned to not send a technician out immediately, because they go out and they flip the switch off, flip the switch back on, and everything works again. So I normally don't spend money troubleshooting or repairing until that particular siren is consistent in its reporting. And then what I do is I ask the net control specifically, you may remember this, there are times that they come out and they say, we specifically need someone to go to that siren and confirm it going on or off. And number 19 is a good example. Number 19, but it got hit by lightning a long time ago, and it just kind of does whatever it wants to do. I don't know how many times you guys have told me it's going off, but it had trouble reporting.
That's Griffin, right? 19's Griffin, I think.
No, by Norman North in the Postal Center.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
How many watts do your sound of your siren put out?
I think each one's 1,000, or what is it? Each one is 100 watts times 10.
Okay,
That makes sense?
Yeah.
Majority of mine are more than 2,000, and then I've got one that does 3,200. So.
Oh, we have an arms race brewing. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's what they are.
to get you had a third question, Al?
Yes, question the third. What is that steel cable that's coming out of the driver's stack?
Well, that's an interesting question.
The only thing is like on the side of the pole.
Yes, it comes down a few feet below the driver's stack, and it has a loop in it, like maybe somebody could reach up there with a pole and pull on it.
Lee's saying
The only thing I think of that's the antenna cable, but
that's
the
awesome.
grounding, most of the grounding goes down through the center and is attached at the bottom with the ground lug, which thanks to Silver Star Construction, when they hit my second tower, they put a blade on the pole to scrape the easement. They put a blade on the pole, scrape down the pole, and when they hit the ground and pulled back, they ripped the ground lug off of the siren, and that was another interesting story. But the only thing I can think of that's got a loop in it is should be the antenna cable.
David, I think it's a safety cable where they put all of them together in case the wind were to come and take one of them loose. It wouldn't be a falling object.
Well, you got me curious now because
Yeah. Me too.
if you can, send me the one that you saw that on, because all the siren heads just mount right on top of that pole. There's no safety cable to the sirens. Matter of fact, that's the reason why when you saw Peter doing this with his hand, that's what happened to both sirens that got hit by construction crews. They hit the pole hard enough to cause the whiplash, and it toppled the heads off the pole. There's no safety cable holding that stuff up. So if it's some kind of cable coming off a pole, then send me the one you're talking about, and we'll go look at it.
Ground truth, man.
It's on all of them, is what they're saying. I think it's the antenna cables, what I'm thinking. Antenna?
That'd be the only thing I can think of. I mean, that's one of the when I referred to earlier. We're having some radio reception problems. I think some of the ones that we have, I bought some Yagi antennas a long time ago, and we played with one, trying to get it tuned up there for a little while. And that's one of the goals I have is to start. I mean, we replaced controllers and antennas and radios and cable. We've done about everything we can do at the EOC. So now we're going to have to start looking at each pole that consistently has issues with reporting and find out what's going on. So the real problem is probably the ultimate person to have work on sirens is Andy Goddard and his crew. But the problem with Andy and Safety Com and all the big name siren companies is, they get these big contracts with Oklahoma City and Texas. A lot of them just live in Texas. So to get a siren maintenance crew to come up and look at one single pole is it's kind of like trying to do home repair. To get somebody good to come and do some little repair thing around your house is very difficult.
It is.
And that's why I watch sirens over a period of weeks and try to be conservative with the funds that I do have. You mentioned, Peter, about originally. There was no budget for the sirens when I came on board. It was the emergency management per se budget I'll retain my own opinion about how it was being used, but there was a whole lot of golf tournament receipts I found previous years. But the budget now, matter of fact, this is usually it was hit or miss on getting the money I needed to properly maintain the sirens. We got about 20 grand a year over the last several years. This is the first budget year that I'm in right now that I actually got what I asked for, which was about $42,000. And that goes a lot faster than you realize. The problem with electronic sirens, radio is $1,700. Control board is, $1,000. Those speakers are $750. The amplifiers are $500.
And that's not the installed price either.
No. I was getting ready to say, then if you got to have a guy to come out with a bucket truck at $200 or $300 an hour plus travel time, and if he's got to spend the night and on and on and on, and anybody want to invest in a siren maintenance company with me, I'm looking at trying to have a retirement business, and it's just, it's a thing that you got to manage, and so a lot of times during the summer we've got some people that are very active in the community, and I appreciate that. Please let that be known. But they get frustrated because they report week after week that a siren's not going off. And what they have to understand is the bulk of my money has to be spent between December, January, and February, going into March, April, May. And that's where I really try to make sure that 100% of our sirens are functional. Because you never know. I can spend all kinds of money in June, and then we have a late summer thunderstorm. Like we had a lightning storm go through one year, and it just wreaked havoc on our sirens. It hit 10 or 12 sirens and just blew them up. And if I have that situation, then I have to spend all of my money to repair them. I have no repair money in February, March, going into big season, and a lot of those things are, what the public doesn't see. What the public sees is my siren's not going off, and you got a problem. That's what the public sees. So we try to respond to those things that are high profile as we can, especially around the schools and around the metro part of Norman, simply because of the politics involved. But again, just one more time, I try to manage that by actually confirming we got a problem and then grouping those together to get the most bang for my buck dollar wise. Unlike Norman, Norman, and unlike Moore, I about blew my own joke there. Unlike Moore, I don't have unlimited funds.
And the huge expense account that I've heard that their EM has.
Moving right along.
Yeah, look at that. Look at that new set of wheels he's got.
Yeah.
Just one.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much.